Hello and welcome to another Endless Celts episode. Today is Wednesday, the 21st of August, and it is another double pivot episode. We have got myself, we've got Ross, we've got Franny. Guys, how you doing? Welcome.
Not bad, mate. Bit of a shit night tonight, weather-wise.
It certainly is, mate. It's deplorable.
It is.
Franny, can you top?
I am good. I've got the same weather as Ross. I'm pretty much just round the corner, so we're experiencing the same weather.
I was going to ask, can you top weather chat? Have you got anything more interesting to bring to the table besides the good old weather? No. I like your top. Love your top.
Thanks. I'll be honest, it was my uncle that got me. I couldn't. I'm assuming it's from Conley's bar, or Connell's. O'Neill's, sorry. Totally wrong. Yeah. O'Neill's bar. It's got an O'Neill's badge on it, so I'm guessing that's what he picked up for.
You know, I always thought that Guinness would have been quite an appropriate sponsor for Celtic, but when I read up on it, I heard that Guinness, as employers in Dublin, they weren't very fair to their workers. I don't know if there was a kind of an anti-Irish sentiment. I don't know if it was ever under English ownership or something like that, but I read something about it that they weren't as benevolent as what I would have thought they were. Ross, no football top tonight. What's wrong? Is it a turtleneck that you've donned?
No, it's just a normal t-shirt. It's just got a bit of a higher collar. But no, I actually, to be honest with you, hoops are they're no my friend right now. I've put a wee bit of timber on. I need to get back out doing a bit of running. So I have just went for the plain t-shirt just to make me look a wee bit better, hopefully.
Well, good on you for being motivated to do running, especially whenever the nights are fair drawn in and stuff like that.
But however, that's horrible.
Speaking of football tops, I thought I'd just get out of the way. It's not a major feature of tonight. But the new Celtic top is the third strip. It's amazing how Celtic have already, I think it's tomorrow when it actually goes officially on sale, but it's amazing how quickly they are to get their tops out now before we even get in proper recruitment during the summer. What's your thoughts, Ross, on the actual top? The explanation of it is it's a homage to the Celtic terracing, or the anniversary of the terracing going away, something like that, and a blend of the Celtic flags and scarves and strips and stuff like that. A lot of bullshit, in my opinion, you know, quite wishy-washy. But do you like the top? Would you buy it?
Well, initially when it was started circulating, don't know if it was last week or the week before, I was a bit sceptical. But usually when Celtic tops come out like that, I'm always sceptical, and then it sort of grows on me. But this one is growing on me a lot quicker than previous tops. I really like it. Like you, that flags and scarves, banners sort of thing that they'd put out. It's not for me. It might look more like that when you see it in person, but I think it looks more like the view that the players have got for the training ground in Lennoxtown rather than the stands. But I really like the top, and to be honest with you, Hatate was modelling it today, and he had like a pink t-shirt underneath it, and I think in hindsight, I think they'll regret not putting the pink trims on it, because I think it really, I mean, you wouldn't think it would go, but when you see it actually on Hatate, it does look quite good. But it's not got that, and I still like the top. It's a bit different. It's sort of going towards that camo sort of look, but I like the colours. I like the design. I'm fairly happy with that top, but I don't think we'll see us in it that often. It's just one of the ones that's just another money maker, isn't it?
Yeah, I think whenever I saw the pictures of the players modelling it, it was Anthony Ralston that made it look a wee bit more familiar to going back to the 70s, 80s, 90s in Ireland, just with his ginger beard, you know, and his very kind of like Celtic look about him. Certainly when Hatate was wearing it with the pink undertones, you know, that kind of threw me as well. And we've got a Friends reference already from Paul McFarlane. Pivot. In regards to the double pivots, yes, that will go down well with some people. To everybody in the comments, thanks very much for joining in. Hope you enjoy your evening. Hope you are doing well so far. Get your comments coming in, and we'll try and share as much as we can. Right, okay, let's get. I think someone actually got back to me regarding Guinness. It was an old Anglo family who backed the UVF. Yeah, that might have kind of been familiar to what I remember reading. So I don't think they were as they wouldn't have been an appropriate sponsor. However, Franny, the shirt that you're wearing is still very, very nice. Don't let that detract from wearing it again. So, guys, we've got a few things to talk about. Obviously, there was some news that broke earlier on. We will get to that. However, we're going to kind of just make our way in gradually, okay? Tentatively, we will get there. Going to start off with the beginning of the season for Celtic. Now, obviously, it was a very, very positive pre-season. Celtic going off to America. Not done that in a while, but we went off to America and there was a few eye-catching performances, a few eye-catching results against some top-caliber teams, shall we say. Although I don't know if you can include Chelsea in that nowadays. But certainly beating Man City, beating Chelsea, that was a really good start to the pre-season. And Brendan Rodgers, once we got back to the UK, he said it's one of the greatest pre-seasons that he's ever had as a first-team coach. However, it has really, really we've kind of found our groove very, very early into the season, albeit by playing Kilmarnock right at the start, who were in between two European ties. Probably came into our favour, despite how formidable they were domestically last season. So beating Kilmarnock 4-1, and then Hibs as well, who have got a new manager, and he's already been under fire, and we've already had to play Hibs twice now in the league and in the League Cup. We've scored 9 goals already, only conceded 1, and that's 3 competitive games. I think results-wise, it's been very, very positive. But Franny, wanted to start with yourself. One of my main complaints last season was in terms of just entertainment. When you football, when you boil down to it, for me, it's all about entertainment. Even if you're not the most successful team, even if you're not winning day in, day out, if you're entertained, that's the main thing about football. And I feel as if we're getting back to that. I feel that from the playing side of things anyway, now focusing on the positivity, what we've got so far is, despite the lack of incomings, what we've got right now is another season under Brendan Rodgers, and the people are being more synchronised in terms of their attacking movement. They know their individual expectations. They know what Brendan Rodgers wants of them. So another season under Brendan with some of the same players, keeping that core anyway. I feel as if things are looking, we've got a more harmony in the playing style. So I wanted to get your thoughts on in terms of what you're seeing on the pitch with these first 3 competitive games. How would you rate it out of 10 so far, the way that we've started, albeit not the most competitive opposition that we've had so far?
I'd maybe get about a 7.5 out of 10, 7.5, 8 out of 10, Gav. I think it's been a really, really good start. Obviously, that is a big mug. Did you get it for Sports Direct or something?
I got it as a Christmas present from my sister years ago. It's obviously because I'm like a Godfather fan. But by the way, it's just a cup of disappointment. It's water. It's just water. you can imagine that if my speech gets slurred later on in the podcast. Well, I can guarantee that's not going to happen. It's simply water.
But I think it's been a really, really pleasing start this season. Very positive. Like you said, pre-season. Pre-season's weird because if you don't have a good pre-season, you sometimes say you can't read too much yet, and then when you have a good one like we do, we kind of say pre-season's important. But I think for me with pre-season, it's all about getting the sharpness up, getting a level of performance. Results in a way don't really matter. It's always nice to win these games, especially against English opposition, because you just know, especially that Chelsea one, there was a famous clip of the sort of Chelsea fan page doing the watch along, and just seeing the disappointment in them gradually going as you went through the video was great. So it's always good to get one over a team down south, and then to carry that on to the start of the season. It's been very pleasing. Obviously, if you go back to Angie's first season, we had a tricky start of it opening to the league campaign. We weren't not very. Some of the results weren't great, but you could look at it. Touching on what you were saying about entertainment, Gav, you could see what Ange was trying to do, and I think that's what kind of bought him a wee bit of grace in a way. Is we knew we could see a style, we could see what he was trying to do, and I think obviously Rodgers last season, I think you could see what he was doing, but it was just maybe a wee bit of hangover in some of the players coming from Anstey, Brendan Rodgers. Don't really know, it just seemed a wee bit more, the play was a bit slower and things like that. I don't think that was Brendan Rodgers asking to play that slow. Just, I think the players, just the way they were playing, it was one of the things. Obviously, as the season progressed, like in the latter of the season, we got a wee bit better. But we've certainly started this season kind of how Rodgers started his first time round, where it's just blown teams away. The second half against Hibs at the weekend there, we maybe taking the foot off the gas a wee bit, but we're always in control of that game. But for me, I think it's been a brilliant start, Gavin. All the fans seem to be buying into it. The players are obviously, as you say, buying into Rodgers. You can see that in the way they're playing. It's fast, just to press, and it's what we seen with Ange at the team's pomp, where it was just the front three, just proper pressing it. I think if you watch Kuhn's goal for sort of behind the Hibs keeper, if you like, the pressing for the front three is brilliant. Then you actually see the midfielders are about 18-20 yards out, so everybody's pressing as a team and they all seem to know what they're doing. So it's great to watch, and I'm sure we'll get into it, Gavin. I know I've got everything crossed that the board are going to. Brendan Rodgers has got to get the help he needs to really progress this team, because what he's doing with it, what he's got there is amazing. So just if he can get the final touches or just get what he wants in there, obviously the sky's not the limit. We're never going to win the Champions League, but I think we could do a bit in Europe if he is given what he can get.
Aye. Well, the season is definitely still in its infancy, and there will be a lot of highs, a lot of lows still to come, a lot of drama in the boardroom in terms of accusations from us punters, at the lack of recruitment and things like that. But Ross, I think we're guilty sometimes of getting carried away when things are bad, when we do have things to moan about, so it's probably right to call it out whenever things are going good. As Franny said, a good pre-season, a really blistering start to the domestic campaign already. So you could actually be forgiven for actually getting a wee bit excited about the domestic campaign anyway. That's the bread and butter. Brendan Rodgers spoke about how he wants to get the League Cup back again as well. There's been talk about a treble. There's been even some people ludicrously talking about going invincible again. Time will tell. But I think it's nice to recognise the merits of the team playing well right now, and you can probably notice a difference. Even though Brendan Rodgers is still largely working with the same group of players as last season, you can probably recognise the difference between now, this time at this stage of the season compared to last time when we were just after the back of a defeat to Kilmarnock at Rugby Park. We get put out of the first cup, and that kind of diminished any expectations of a treble. So what's your thoughts on it so far?
I'm fairly happy. I don't know how you can be happy. I think most Celtic fans are. I think, like you've touched on there, I think that the difference between now and this time last season, the difference in the team is massive. I think that you can see that everybody knows their job more. I think Kuhn, I think he's been a real shining light on the right hand side for us. And listen, I was one of the ones that wrote him off fairly early on. I don't normally do that, but he was just so bad that I didn't see any way that there was going to be a player coming out of him. But he's proved me wrong, and he's been one of the top performers. But the team, I think, for spells last season, I think it was getting to the stage where the form was so poor at times that we were playing and relying on sort of individuals. But I think we're playing as a team now, and the individuals are still coming through in moments in the game, but we're playing more as a unit. You can see it as soon as we lose the ball. It's listen, I'm not telling anybody anything new here, but you watch us and we just swarm round. We've got 3 or 4 players right on the person in the opposing team who's picked up the ball, and more often than not, we're winning the ball back really quick. And when you do that, it saps the life out the opposing team, and that's what you expect for a Celtic team, certainly a Brendan Rodgers team as well, domestically. Listen, time will tell in Europe whether we can carry that on and make a better fist of it. You don't know what players we're going to sign. We've still got best part of 2 weeks, or maybe slightly more than 2 weeks. Hopefully that we get some business done. Hopefully we don't obviously get into the Kyogo and Hatate and Matt O'Reilly chat very soon. But going into it's difficult to say. Do you know what I mean? It's just a train of thought. I'm not saying this will happen, but we are, as I've said, and everybody will agree, that we are playing better as a team. We're playing much better football. And like you say, it's largely the same team. But this team going in, this year, we have Adam Ida in the door. We didn't have him heading into the Champions League last season. We've got Kuhn playing far better than he was. We didn't have him going into the Champions League last season. Hatate was injured, so we didn't have him. Now, obviously, that's hoping that we hold on to him. Albeit, the likelihood is we probably won't have Matt O'Reilly, but we've got a Bernardo a year down the line. I think he's a better player now than he was at this point last season. He was only just in the door, and then we were relying on a 20, 21-year-old to help carry us through in the Champions League. So I think even without new signings, we're in a far better place going into this Champions League campaign than we were last season. Mm-hmm. But you have to caveat and say that we do need bodies in. And what I would say is, if we don't sign any other player, but, well, how do I word this? Basically, what I'm trying to say is, if we don't sign a left back at the very least, then that is absolutely shocking, because we should not be going in or leaving this window without another left back to challenge, support, whatever you want to say, Greg Taylor, or take his place, because Greg Taylor on his own is not enough. We need that at the very least. We need more than that, of course we do, but at the very least, we need that.
Mm-hmm. Indeed we do. And we will talk about recruitment, guys. Let's not procrastinate any further. Let's talk about the news that we heard today. We're going to talk about the rumoured exits. Now, there's one guy who we didn't expect for Fabrizio Romano to be talking about, and that was Kyogo Furuhashi. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but do you guys remember something? It seemed an innocent thing at the time, but do you think in the summer, do you remember hearing that he changed his management team, his management agency? I never thought anything of it. However, today we've seen the news from Fabrizio, the man in the know sometimes, that Kyogo could be one of a number of options that Man City would be looking at to replace Julian Alvarez, who left to go to Atletico Madrid. Whenever you think about it, his movement, Kyogo's movement in that Man City team, you can understand it. However, with the thought of Matt O'Reilly going, I've been kind of coming to terms with it. With Hatate rumoured to go to Leicester, I was becoming in denial. And then when I heard about Kyogo, I was like, it was on the verge of tragedy. I can't quite come to terms with him leaving us. But at the same time, if you think about whenever he joined us under Ange, this will be his fourth season. He had two under Ange, he had one under Brendan now, a second under Brendan. This is his fourth season now with us. And if you think about the short journey that he's been on, albeit, if anybody has deserved the chance to go to the best club in the world, to join the best coach in the world, Kyogo's right up there. Like, he's 29, 30 now, Like, don't get me wrong, I do not want to see him go. I think it'd be a tragedy in terms of trying to replace him. And his movement is so unique. So unique. It's easier to buy an Adam Ida, I think, than what it is to buy a Kyogo. Because whenever we were talking about Kyogo, we were comparing him to Henrik Larsson's movement. It might not be as good as Larsson, but you know there were similarities in the way that he's able to find space without being a very strong player, without being a fast player as such. His speed of thought is uncomparable to many players, many centre forwards we've had. Maybe going back to Larsson, maybe Robbie Keane is an exception. However, Franny, the news hit me hard. I'm sure you're probably of a similar thinking. What was your thoughts whenever you heard that? Was it denial? And how have you been since then? Have you been processing that?
Personally, I don't see it, Gavin, but maybe it is just denial and not wanting it to happen. I'm trying to put yourself sort of in that EPL goldfish bowl where I think they do look down at our league at times. They might look at it as Julian Alvarez, a World Cup winner, Copa America winner. He's obviously won the Premier League with Man City, albeit not a regular starter, but I think he played a lot of minutes last season anyway, not necessarily number 9. To then replace him with Celtic's number 1 striker, just that, when you look at that, I don't think is a great sell for Man City. But what is maybe interesting, that maybe gives it a bit of credence, there maybe be something in it. Like, Fabrizio Romano is usually bang on the money with a lot of stuff. It did say it's one of a number of strikers are looking at. I don't think Man City will have just one. Yes, Kyogo, and I say Kyogo did move his agency and he's went to that one that obviously Postecoglou's part. I think it's kind of part of the City group kind of connection. And obviously an agent's job, the only way they're making money is if their client moves clubs. So naturally, it's maybe they would put his name out there. So there maybe is something in it. And also Pep Guardiola, I'm sure after the pre-season game, said that he's a player that with nice movement. He's very complimentary, Kyogo. Now, I don't know the line of question that Pep was asked then. So he's maybe just gave a sort of a very diplomatic answer. And that's me just kind of putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5 out of it. So probably that's more accurate how I'm looking at Pep's comments. But Romano also said it's for the winger's position, which I know. Before Kyogo came to Celtic, I think he was a winger, but he's never really one game at Ibrox, and I don't think he's really played out wide for us ever again. So I don't see it. I mean, but like you, Gavin, like you said, if the bid comes in, Man City will obviously be able to pay what we need to do. 29-year-old Kyogo, he'll not get a bigger move, I don't think, than a Man City. Especially for his wage packet. Obviously, at his age, his next move, as much as I don't want to believe, I would happy for him to stick around at Celtic for many more years. Because, like you touched on, he's got to be a hard guy to replace. But Man City will be able to offer him a massive contract for his last contract, but it'll be certainly the last chance of a big contract. He'll go to a club where, yes, he'll be second choice striker behind Haaland, but he'll probably get plenty of minutes. And then a chance of winning league titles there, win domestic honours there. They'll likely go deep in the Champions League. It's going to be a hard one to turn down if the bid comes in. But this late in the window, I just can't see us accepting it. The only way I can see it happen is if your O'Reillys or Hatates and that don't leave. I don't think we can sell 2 of the sort of 4 players that have came out the day that I've seen a couple of reports that CCV's attracting interest for, I think, Atalanta and Galatasaray as well. I think only if we're looking at Kyogo, Hatate, O'Reilly and CCV, only one of them can leave for me. I don't want any of them to leave, obviously, but I don't think you can go on with 2, maybe be suicidal to let 2 go, never mind any more than 2. But I'm hoping I'm not in denial about Kyogo, but I just don't see it happening, Gavin, for me.
I hope you're right. Ross, the prospect of having to replace Kyogo with a couple of weeks to go before the transfer window shuts is a hard task. Almost impossible to kind of compare him. You can't do a like for like. You need to diversify, and maybe Rodgers would kind of, he likes his powerful, fast strikers. So I don't think we would see the likes of him again if he was to leave. But again, let's go back to the legitimacy of this. Let's maybe not get ahead of ourselves. Firstly, I think if the bid came in, Kyogo would be very, very interested. However, do you think it's likely? Do you think Man City need that type of player? And we also spoke about Brendan Rodgers had admitted in his press conference that Kyogo does need shoulder surgery, but he's mature enough to know when he wants to do it. At the moment, he doesn't want to do it. We spoke about his motivations to do it, not his motivations not to actually do the surgery, and maybe it's just the wrong time for him. Maybe he doesn't want to lose his place to Adamida. Maybe he's mindful of the Champions League coming up as well. He doesn't want to miss that. Certainly, if he does it now, or if he did it in the summer, he wouldn't have been playing in those games. So, where do you think the likelihood of this is, of this transfer rumour? Are you bothered?
I'm certainly bothered because for me, he's our number one striker still. I know we've got Adamida in the door. The likelihood of it happening, right now, I would probably say maybe 60-40 in favour of him staying with Celtic. And that's because...
Did I like the odds? That's still too much for me.
Well, it's 60-40, 70-30. But I think the reason that I would still put it in favour of him staying at Celtic is because Franny touched on it earlier there that he's part of a shortlist for Man City. Who's on that shortlist, I don't know. But that means it's not obviously just Kyogo they're looking at. But absolutely, if Man City do decide to come in and make a bid for Kyogo, I think, like you have alluded to, touched on, it would be very, very difficult for Kyogo at any stage of his career. But at 29-year-old, his last opportunity, like you have said, to get a big move, I think it'd be very, very difficult with what Man City can offer him. Franny said it, deep into the Champions League, an opportunity winning Premier League titles, it'd be very, very hard for Kyogo to turn it down. And I would fully understand him wanting to go there. How could you not? I don't think that at this point Celtic would want to sell Kyogo. The only way I see that happening is if his head's turned and then he basically says, look, I know you don't want to sell me, but I want to go there. I want this move. Maybe throws the toys out of pram. I don't think Kyogo would do that, but you never know. I think if Man City make the bid, I think the only way he goes is if Kyogo pushes the move through and kind of maybe downs tools, maybe causes a bit of unrest. I don't think at this stage, Celtic, like we all know, they don't have to sell. And at this stage of the window, it would be crazy to sell your perceived number one striker, even though you've got Adamida in the door. Your manager's been saying for weeks, we need another striker, maybe even a third. Adamida was his number one target, but it wasn't to replace Kyogo. It was to come in and support Kyogo and challenge Kyogo, and like he did for the final 6 months of last season. But I mean, if everything that has come out today is to be believed, and Man City do go for Kyogo, we've been linked to a Polish forward, a young Polish forward, 22-year-old. I think the fees in the region of $6.5 million. I can't remember the guy's name, but I mean, that's big money for us to spend. It's whether he's worth that, I don't know, but it's certainly a big fee. So it's a fee that a lot of Celtic fans have been crying out for us to spend. So who knows what will happen? It's a difficult one, but I really, I think for me, as much as Matt O'Reilly was our Player of the Year last season, I think at this stage, losing Kyogo would be a tougher one to take than losing Matt O'Reilly, just because we've only got one more option at the moment if Kyogo goes, so we're back to square one. Whereas Matt O'Reilly, as much as he's a brilliant player, I think hopefully if Celtic knowing that it's very likely that he'll go, that they've been doing work to get somebody else in, plus they've got other guys in that midfield area that can sort of offset, if you want a better phrase, Matt O'Reilly going. We've still got Awata, and I'm not saying any of these guys are as good, but they're further options to come in there. And then if we get another body in, you've obviously got Bernardo that's came in as well. Again, not as good as Matt O'Reilly, but I think Bernardo he's got a real potential. And I think if Bernardo gets a real sustained run in the team, I think he could be a big player for us this season if Matt O'Reilly goes. I mean, but that's not me saying it has to just be him as the replacement. I would like to see somebody else coming in there. But
exactly.
For me, I'll go back to it. I think that Kyogo going at this stage of this window would be a tougher one for me to take than Matt O'Reilly, as much as I love him.
I agree with both your thoughts, and actually there was one comment that caught my eye. I've been making sure that I didn't scroll away from it. It's from P. McLaughlin, and he says he started to think that the board are going to play the look of who we kept card when we buy no one, and you wonder if the way that the situation is is progressing, that the real triumph of the transfer window will actually be retaining who we had from last season. Albeit it looks like Matt O'Reilly's probably away, but if we keep Kyogo and if we keep Hatate, and it should never ever be like that. You need to be strengthening, but it should never be like that. But it almost feels like that'll be a victory in itself, and us actually been able to deter bids. But hopefully it doesn't come like that. And in saying that, as Celtic fans, we have become kind of conditioned to seeing some of our prized assets go, whether it be a long drawn out saga like this Matt O'Reilly one, or whether it was like Jota going last summer. Nobody expected Jota to go. It was like a gut punch. It was so unexpected with the Jota one because there wasn't really any whispers of it beforehand. It was a bit like watching Game of Thrones and then one of your favourite characters just gets killed at the end of the episode and you're like, where did that come from? And like you're trying to pick up the pieces. It's a bit like that, but that's my point. You know, sometimes these things are very protracted, and sometimes they come out of nowhere. But no one is bigger than a club. I'm trying to remember which Celtic figure actually said that. It might have been Jockstein, it might have been Tommy Burns. I'm not sure, recent or decades back. But yeah, nobody's bigger than a club, and if big characters leave, then we need to replace them. We need to move on. But I guess the only saving grace is that domestically we are looking strong. And we're glad that we've got Adam Meader in now anyway. But a couple of quick thoughts before we kind of move on from the Kyogo one. I meant to say it earlier on when we're talking about the playing style and what we've noticed so far. See the passing from I keep meaning to say Joe Hart, but it's not. It's Kasper Schmeichel. The passing from Kasper Schmeichel from his box, one touch passing or whatever, just firing into and through the middle into feet and our midfielders. It's so aesthetically pleasing, totally different from Joe Hart's capabilities, but it's a real asset to have, and I'm enjoying that. It makes us more dynamic, and whenever you talk about the predictable kind of horseshoe build-up that Brendan Rodgers' style of play is renowned for, that kind of breaks the mold in some regards. It keeps people thinking, keeps people dynamic, and it's brilliant to watch. Another thing is Maida at the weekend. I know that we're not going to talk too much about the actual Hibs game, but Maida at the weekend, I thought he grabbed his goals very well. We've got McGinty, who you all know from the podcast. He's a big advocate of Maida being a centre forward, and he made his name as a centre forward in Japan before we bought him, and that's where he plays number 9 for Japan whenever he does play for them. But I think Maida could potentially be a third choice, but he'll always be first choice on the left. Third choice maybe as a centre forward, but always first. So whenever he's fit, he'll always play on the left, unless of course Kyogo and Ida are not available. So that's my thoughts on that. I wanted to do a quick fire subject, and it's about left backs, full backs actually. So I've done it on the podcast before, and we did centre forwards. And we also did Celtic widemen. So this is probably a less glamorous category. We're going to be talking about the the greatest fullbacks. Now, we're not going to be going back decades. We're kind of going to keep it to our memory, our lifetime as such. So, unfortunately, the likes of Danny McGrain is excluded. I'm sure he would have been right up there now. So, Franny or Ross, I think I'm going to go for yourself, Ross. Not that you, I don't know, just random. I'm going to go for yourself. I'm going to just start off
Does
with.
it sound very random, Gavin? Taking up the Rangers game, then this film. Doesn't sound very random.
Sheer favouritism. So, Celtic fullbacks, and we'll just start off with one name, and then you can choose if he stays on or if you want to switch to a different Celtic fullback. And it can be for yourself, like whether it be quality in their career or best for their time at Celtic. It's up to you, but it's meant to be a quick fire. So we'll just try and kind of move on quickly. So we're going to start off with Andreas Hinkle or Chaduri.
Hinkle.
Okay. Andreas Hinkle or Enrico Annone.
Hinkle.
Andreas Hinkle or Paul Caddis.
Hinkle.
Andreas Hinkle or Anthony Ralston.
Hinkle.
Anthony Hinkle or Bolly Bolingoli.
Oh, Jesus.
Hinkle.
Getting fed up with this guy's name already. Andreas Hinkle or Adam Matthews.
Oh,
that is a good one, by the way.
I'm going to go Matthews just.
Okay, Adam Matthews or Lee Naylor.
Lee Naylor.
Lee Naylor or Mark Wilson.
Lee Naylor.
You smashed the hun. Okay, Lee Naylor or Tosh McKinley.
Lee Naylor.
Lee Naylor or Mo Kamara.
Lee Naylor.
Lee Naylor or Paul Telfer.
Oh, that's a decent one, by the way.
Starting with Naylor.
Okay, Lee Naylor or Oh My Days, Jeremy Frimpong.
Jeremy Frimpong.
Jeremy Frimpong or Danny Fox.
Frimpong.
And Jeremy Frimpong or your favourite, Greg Taylor.
Greg Taylor.
Would you stop it there? Greg Taylor.
Longevity.
Greg Taylor or I'm taking a liberty with this one. Greg Taylor or Didier Agat. I know he was a wing back, but yeah.
Agat.
Okay, really? Okay. Didier Agat or Jackie McNamara.
Oh, come on.
Agat.
What?
Didier Agat or Edson Braithwaite. A World Cup finalist. Agat. Okay, Didier Agat or Momo Silla.
Agat.
Didier Agat or Mikael Lustig.
See, it's tough because you're saying Agat as a wing back. I'm going to go Lustig.
Okay, Mikael Lustig or Stefan Mahe.
Lustig.
Mikael Lustig or Hatem El Hamed.
Lustig.
Mikael Lustig or Charlie Mulgrew.
Lustig.
Mikael Lustig or Emilio Izagir.
Oh.
This is tough. Lustig.
Mikael Lustig or Tom Boyd. Dun, dun, dun. Don't offend any of the Celtic dads.
Your class.
Tom Boyd.
Tom Boyd or Jean-Jo Pierre Doumbé.
Oh my
Boyd.
God, that's class.
Boyd.
Tom Boyd or Alistair Johnson.
Alistair Johnson.
Tom Boyd or Alistair Johnson or Jeremy Tolyan.
Johnston.
Alistair Johnson or Kieran Tierney.
Kieran Tierney.
Okay. Right, well, that's us. I hope you enjoyed that.
He was the one, like, see, when you mentioned that, Gav, that was the one where the the Celtic or I think it was. I say the Celtic comments. I think it was fans commentating or something. Is that with Carlos Queller's something? Then 1 week is this, and next week he's a.
That was the same game where he handballed and Nakamura shot.
Was it Nakamura?
Penalty and they're sending off. Yeah.
Wilson did score a goal for where that sort of it came out to him, but he kicked it into the ground. I think we were at that game, Friday.
Did it knock out a Rangers player at the same time? It was it knocked out Papac, wasn't it?
Aye.
That's what it was. A brilliant game. But what was it called? He's got to go. He's got to walk. He's got to get to fuck. That's what it was.
Carlos Queller last week. This week.
Carlos Queller, player of the year last year. Now he's a dick.
So, Franny, would you have concurred with Kieran Tierney? Anybody in the comments who would have disagreed with that? Would you have went for somebody else? There was like a few good players in there, a few not so good players in there. I tried to kind of vary up, but we did have Hinkle for several rounds, and eventually he get taken over by Adam Matthews. A surprise one by Ross, but eventually we got to Kieran Tierney. Franny, would you have? I
think a couple would have went either way, but I think Tierney would have inevitably won at the end. But there's a couple that probably, like I think Izagiri would have probably picked. But I think in the main I would have been there or thereabouts. Well,
and by the way, Emilio probably, correct me if I'm wrong, the only South American who's actually worked out at Celtic Park. I think he's the only one. Everybody else has been not so good for one reason or another.
I can't think
Anyway, now for rumoured exits, obviously we've spoken about Kyogo Furuhashi. We have got Lagerbielke, who apparently has been linked with Heerenveen. Mikey Johnson is just linked with leaving. No specific club. I know that we're not too fussed about who he goes to, but we could probably actually fetch some money for Mikey Johnson. I wonder if the transfer fee would be mitigated because of his injury record. However, Matt O'Reilly is the big one. It's kind of, don't want to spend too much on it because I know that it's Groundhog Day. However, the fact that Atalanta had this long, protracted saga and they fell away, and now the fact that Brighton have came in, it's like Brighton were just waiting in the wings, waiting to see if we would accept a fee from Atlanta. And I'm confident at that point, if we did, then Brighton would have jumped in to better it. But the fact that Atalanta have fell away, it feels like this is a legitimate approach now from Brighton. That they're not messing around, that they want their man and they will be prepared to go for it. There's been whispers of 30 million breaking our transfer record anyway. So it looks like it's on the cards. I had heard rumours that, or I have been told that Matt O'Reilly has already said his goodbyes to the staff at Parkhead. It might have been his last game for us at the weekend there against Hibs. But we're prepared for it. And if we get the right money, if we're going to be a selling club, then we need to sell him when his value is at the highest. That's what we have to do. No point in saying you're a selling club and then shying away from this opportunity. So it's an opportunity for us to continue our transfer model, to make a possible record transfer fee, and for him to go on and play with better players and play against a better calibre of players, albeit he might not get Champions League anytime soon. But that's the nature of football anyway, and he's going to quadruple his money. So it's what it is. It's the nature of the beast. But I think we're all kind of prepared to see him go probably quite soon. I think it might only be Willie in the podcast who's still holding out hope. He's got a £5 bet with James that this transfer is not going to materialise. Ross, are you certain? Is it 10 out of 10 certain? 9 out of 9? 9 out of 10? Should have done percentage-wise. Are you 90% certain? 95% certain?
I think it's pretty inevitable now. I think they have come in with a serious bid. I don't know if Celtic accepted the bid.
Don't know.
I'm not sure, but I think. Well, I've heard what you've said there, Gavin, through you, and I've heard it elsewhere that Matt O'Reilly has he's accepted personal terms. I don't know if it's confirmed, but it is looking ever closer. I think if Brighton, I can't remember what the bid was. I think it was €28 million. I don't know what that works out as, but I think it'll be happening very soon. I think that once the bid that Celtic want is in, Celtic will accept it. I think Matt O'Reilly has told Celtic that he'll, if a Premier League team certainly comes in. For me, I think I'd said last week or the week before, whenever I was on, that I felt like he would maybe not go to a Brighton. I felt like he would go to a team that could offer Champions League football.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like Brighton might be his only option now. Obviously, Atlanta could have offered that Champions League football, I think. But they've obviously not been able to meet the valuation, which is fair enough. But I would love to see Matt O'Reilly stay. I actually made my peace with him leaving in the January window when Atletico Madrid were coming in. I didn't think that he would go then, and obviously that transpired. But I did feel that in this window we would lose him. I felt like we would probably lose him a lot earlier in the window than what we were going to if it does transpire that he does leave. I would like to have lost him earlier in the window, to be perfectly honest with you, because it would give us more time to get this replacement in. But you would hope that Celtic, all the bids that have been coming in, that at some point they would be expecting the valuation to be met. Football's a very small world. I'm not talking for experience, but you do obviously get the gist that it is a small world, and they hear things and they know things are going on behind the scenes. And I would have hoped that Celtic have been making contingency plans, but it's not. They're not obviously pressing the green light on it just yet, because O'Reilly is still a Celtic player. But I think and hope that if and when O'Reilly does go, that they'll press the green light on whatever move that is that they're wanting in. Obviously, we've seen a couple of players linked, that is Engels or something, or Engles, whatever it is. A hefty sum, but a sum that we can certainly afford. And I would hope that once, if and when Matt O'Reilly goes, that they'll push the button on that and get that deal done fairly quickly. And hopefully he'll be the guy to come in and replace him, and he'll be obviously subsidised with obviously the signing of Bernardo.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And a comment here from Barry Craig. I think he would have preferred the Serie A, but he probably just wants to go now. I genuinely kind of do agree that his playing style would have been better suited on the continent.
Mm-hmm.
I think perhaps the only thing that Matt O'Reilly doesn't have in his locker is the athleticism, the sheer pace, and that can be a little bit more difficult. Even whenever you're playing against, you're up against like players in the EPL who you've never heard of. Almost all of them are proper athletes. I think that's the only one thing that Matt O'Reilly doesn't have in his locker, which is why I thought that he would have really suited the Italian game or the Spanish game. But anyway, wherever he goes, it's not yet done. But we'll see, and I will support him unless he goes to a Chelsea, for example. Right, and I guess the other one, the other sledgehammer was Rio Hatate to Leicester. Now, Franny, we do want to make this a happy podcast, so we'll try not to linger on it too much. However, Rio Hatate, I guess it's probably no secret to Celtic fans who do kind of follow things on social media, that Rio has always been open to a move to going south of the border. It's how we sell the club to players, that if you do well, give us a couple of seasons, then you can make a name for yourself, you can go down south and earn your money. So it's a natural migration that we see. So Rio Hatate to Leicester, I've not really seen any more about it. It's not been building up, but it was there. What's your thoughts on it? Do you think there's credibility to it? And I think he's a very, very unique player. He's somebody who gets bums off seats. It'd be hard to replace him as well.
I think, again, I think there's obviously something in it, but how concrete that is, I would be guessing. But I think, again, going back to for me, it would be absolutely suicidal to let both him and O'Reilly go. It's two key clogs in that midfield, if you like. I think, say, Gavin He is the type that takes a risk. He'll play the risky pass. He's great on the half turn. He gets caught out a bit at times, but I'd much prefer a player that's willing to take that risk. He's willing to risk losing the ball to play that difficult pass, that defence splitting pass, or take it on the half turn with guys coming up. When he's got guys on him, it can just get that breakaway and just create space for other guys. And obviously, I did say in the summer, I think he said previously as well, that he's got aspirations to play in one of the top 5 leagues. And I've no real issue with that. But for me, as much as a lot of folk maybe like to slate the board, we tend to do a deal when the deal's right for us. Obviously, you can't be keeping unhappy players, but Matt O'Reilly's kind of at his peak now, value-wise. And maybe that's why we're looking to sell him now, because, as we say, that's the model, is buy them in, get a good few years out of them, and sell them at a really high price. And that's the business model. For me, Hatate, I don't think if you had to sell him this summer, I don't think you're getting his peak value this summer. I think you need to get for Hatate, probably need to get another season out of him. And for him to prove, because obviously he had a lot of injuries last season. So for me, I think, again, I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but I'm fairly confident that Hatate will still be here this season and stuff. So I am slightly concerned, but equally, I think I'm confident that as much as some of us, a lot is maybe what have a go at the way the club do their business. I think it would be absolutely ludicrous to sell 2 key players. But I guess to kind of flip it, if you're set, like you touched on, Gab, if you're selling it to a player when he comes in, give us a couple of good seasons, we'll allow you then to progress and move on, go to be at the EPL, Bundesliga, or whatever. So it could be, you don't want to be bringing these guys in and turning their moves down when they come in. It can then be a hard sell. But also, it's like, I suppose if you're selling O'Reilly, it's to sell, you would have to maybe just have a word with Hatate because we can't be selling the twos. And as I say, it's peak value. You're not getting Hatate's true value, I think, this summer.
Yeah.
But again, that is the business model: is bring them in, sell them on. So I don't think it'll happen, but we'll see. We'll see, I suppose.
And a couple of comments here from Smell the Glove, which I totally agree with. Hatate did somewhat agree. Hatate did nothing last season apart from injury. I think there's no ignoring the fact that Hatate has been injured almost every season that he's been with Celtic for. This is now, like, he joined Ange halfway through the first season, correct me if I'm wrong. So this is technically his full season, but Hatate has had disruptive injuries, and I think he's a great player on his day. Franny, though, I do agree with you, he takes risks, and sometimes it doesn't work out well, such as that game in the Netherlands last year in the Champions League. But he's an entertaining player. And another thing that McLaughlin said, he's going to be 27 later on this year. So you can imagine he'd be coming to that junction where he might want to go. However, let's move on from that. A few confirmed exits, though. Kobayashi is going to Portimonense. I think I said that right. That's a Portuguese team. Surprise, surprise. And obviously we know Boston Lawal is off to Stoke. We've got the boy Daniel Kelly, to Millwall. Haksabanovic, he left earlier on. He went to Malmo. Kwon has went on loan to Hibs, and O has went to Genk. So it's good that we have been trimming the squad. That are some positives. In terms of rumoured incomings, Ross, you touched on it earlier. Matthias Bogus, a brilliant name. Is it a bogus rumour? Who knows? But he'll actually turn 23 tomorrow. I was reading this transfer. His transfer market page turns 23 tomorrow, so that could be an unexpected birthday present for him to sign for the Hoops. The transfer market value for him is €4 million. Now, he actually joined Leeds back in 2020 for $100,000, and he'd been on loan to a couple of lower league Spanish clubs. before transferring permanently to LAFC in March 2023. He scored 16 goals, made 6 assists in 32 appearances since joining. And he looks the kind of classic player who makes those intelligent runs into the box, like kind of the archetypal Frank Lampard. There's been a few players down the years where you see that, not so much thinking of Celtic. Like, I remember Stephen Ireland for Man City under the Mark Hughes team, where they had like players like Robinho and stuff like that, and like maybe even Craig Bellamy. But Stephen Ireland for a period looked shit hot. He's one of those kind of midfielders who would just make forward runs into the box, and his timing for a period was impeccable in that system, and he just looked so good at it. And from the clips that I've seen of Mateusz Bogus, he looks to be in that mold. He looks to be a bit of a physical player in terms of that he can hold people off. He looks to have a bit of pace about him. He looks to have an eye for goal, and he can certainly take a shot from distance. And he's also, I saw him, he takes the free kicks and he takes the corners for LA. So an interesting player with the best of his years are ahead of him. However, Ross, I think you might have touched on this transfer fee. I saw 68 million euros. Was that what you'd seen?
I'd seen something like 6.5 million, I think. Aye.
And obviously, a player who's not really got much publicity in the UK or in Spain, but I guess you get a little bit sceptical if he's been in the USA, in the MLS for a season and a half, and all of a sudden, things click for him, and now he's demanding 6 odd million, or his club are demanding 6 million. So I just hope that if we do go for him, then it's the right move. Another one is Luke McCowan from Dundee. Now this, you guys might be less enthused about this one. So apparently he's firmly on the radar. 26-year-old Dundee captain, and Dundee are possibly holding out for 1 million. They've already rejected 750 from Hibs. He scored 10 goals and made 5 assists last term. And so far this year, he scored 2 goals in 2 league games. Do either of you know much about Luke Cowan and Franny?
Nah, just what you see with the domestic game, really, Gavin. I think he's a tidy enough player. It's one that I think makes sense, and it's for me, it'd be a bit of tick in a box, not to totally slate the guy, but I think it'd be one for the sort of European allocation, I feel like. But it's not one that I'd be against. Yeah, he's not maybe got to improve the first 11, but certainly I think he knows what the domestic game's all about, so it's not one I'd be totally against coming in. Yeah, it's not going to get me excited, but I would totally understand that.
I think there's always wisdom in buying the best of the rest in the Scottish Premier League. Like, there was a time where we bought like Barry Robson and Paul Hartley, and you were aware of those players when you came up against their teams. Certainly you would expect a result against their team, but you're aware of the danger that those players posed. Certainly John McGinn, the one that got away. But I don't know if I would class McCowan in that bracket. I do like for us to be picking the best of the rest, as I said, but I don't know if he fits that. Brendan did, however, say that he wants another midfielder. If O'Reilly was to go, then he would want 2. Ross, do you think that he would be a squad player? Do you think there's any rumour to, or do you think there's any credibility to this rumour? Do you think he could be an asset as a squad player, or is he just another Turnbull, Awata, some guy who's never going to get a sniff unless there's proper injuries? You've obviously got Bernardo at the top of the pecking order, chapping on the door to get into the squad.
It's difficult for me to say because I've not seen a lot of the guy. I don't even what age is he?
He's 26.
26. So it's a decent age. I can remember him. I think I seen him playing against Rangers towards the tail end of last season, and it was only brief wee snippets, and I thought he'd done well in the game. He looks as if he maybe a wee bit dynamic, but I mean, I'm only going off memory. I don't know too much about the guy. He's a Scottish player, so you're thinking it's not that glamorous sort of name or whatever that people are wanting to come in. I don't know what you're saying. The fee was £1 million or something. So
£1 million.
it's not a massive fee. Looking at the fee, looking at like where he's coming from and his nationality and all the things that come with it, you would have to say, with the greatest of respect, that he possibly will come in there as a sort of squad player. But that's not a bad thing. You do need squad players, but then you look at it and you go, well, we've got quite a lot of squad players in that midfield area. Unless he's thinking about maybe shipping another one out on loan. I don't know if he's maybe thinking about doing that with a home. He has said recently that he likes home, but he needs to do more. Maybe he needs to go out and loan and get another season under his belt, maybe playing regular football, because I think he's at an age where he does need to play more football than what Celtic are giving him right now. You've got guys like Awata who are barely kicking a ball. I really like Awata. I think he's got a lot to offer. So if he was putting somebody out, I would rather keep Awata than home at this point. But Rodgers, like you've said, he's wanting to. So if it is this Engels and then McCowan, I would be fairly happy with it, because it looks for all the world that Engels would be Matt O'Reilly's replacement. Then you've got the second midfielder that he wants.
Home as well, let's not forget about him.
Did I not mention him there?
You probably did. I'm sorry, because I was the one who forgot about him, so I'm just reminding myself.
Aye. I was actually thinking to myself, I said his name wrong. I don't know. But McCowan would be that second midfielder. Possibly Engels would be the other one if Matt O'Reilly goes. If Matt O'Reilly doesn't go, then you don't need that second midfielder. And you've still got your first choice 3 midfielders, if you like, which is working really well for us now. And I think I would be really confident with that midfield 3 going into Europe. But again, if O'Reilly does go, I don't know a lot about Engels, but you would just sort of have to trust Brendan Rodgers, because up to now, in his first spell and in his second spell, he hasn't really let us down that much. I would trust that he's found a guy that he's happy with, and if he's happy with this guy coming in to replace Matt O'Reilly, then that's great. Whether that is going to be the guy, we're only sort of guessing here, but I wouldn't be totally against this Dundee guy coming in. I think he knows the league really well. When we're playing sort of Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday kind of thing, and it's an extra game as well, I think he's a guy that probably could come into the team domestically and do okay off the back of maybe a guy who's perceived as the first choice player running himself into the ground in a tough European night, home or away. You need that. I think that we were found wanting at times when we were playing in that Champions League domestically, because we were leaning on guys like Bernardo in the Champions League, whereas probably at the start of the season, Brendan Rodgers bringing him would have thought, I can bring him into a domestic game and lean on your guys like Hatate and stuff for European games. But he probably played more football than Brendan Rodgers expected because of injuries, etc. And he might be a player like that. But again, time will tell on it if he comes in.
Indeed. It almost kind of reminds me, do you remember when we signed Davy Hanna from Dundee United in the mid-90s? It was just a very, very uninspiring domestic signing that did nothing. He was just an addition to the squad. He did nothing to really enhance the team. He just made us so average. And I think he was also a Rangers fan. Correct me if I'm wrong, Davy Hanna.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Anyway,
then you look at
sounded names.
See, you look at Rodgers. Was it Rodgers that brought Johnny Hayes in? Am I right in saying that, or was it Neil Lennon?
No, you would have been right, because Johnny Hayes was one of the best players.
I feel like he came in after did he not score in the cup final for Aberdeen, then go to us the season after?
Yeah, I think Brendan was still there, wasn't he? After?
Aye, so
I'm sure it was Rogers.
much the same. A very uninspiring signing. He was okay, but he wasn't going to really make the team better for to go to that next level in the Champions League. But I thought over his time at Celtic, he was a very, very good squad player. And I said it in this podcast numerous times when he was being slated. But he could be, albeit it's a different position, but that sort of level of signing.
Aye. Right, okay. So apart from Luke McKibben, we've got Owen Beck. We've don't want to talk about Owen Beck anymore. It's even less interesting than Luke McKibben. I think we'll move on to the On This Day feature. Now, on this day, let me just bring up the details of this. It's quite an unexpected one. So, on this day, 21st of August 2002, the BBC in Belfast receive a phone call claiming to be from the Loyalist Volunteer Force, warning that Neil Lennon would be seriously hurt if he played for Northern Ireland that night against Cyprus. Now, I think that's something that we should never ever forget. I think it was one of the darkest days in Celtic's history. Now, although it was Neil Lennon representing Northern Ireland and the threat came from the north of Ireland, he was part of the Celtic family, still is and always will be part of the Celtic family in my opinion, and it will always be part of our collective history. And I brought up a news article from The Guardian, and I'll try not to read too much of it and bore you, but hopefully you're still engaged with this, because I think it's a very, very important event in our history. And football in Northern Ireland was plunged into a sectarian crisis last night after team captain Neil Lennon was forced to pull out of the squad's friendly match with Cyprus after receiving death threats. Lennon, who was due to captain his country in his first match at Windsor Park, told his international manager, Sammy McIlroy, of his decision just hours before kick-off, after police had earlier informed him of the threats. The Glasgow Celtic midfielder continued to play for his country last year after his family in Lurgan had received threats following his transfer from Leicester City, but yesterday's renewed threats appear to have thrown his international career in doubt after he decided not to play. And from the quotes, we've got Jim Bhoys, the Irish Football Association president. He said, "No one knows if this is a serious or a crank, but at the end of the day, I have to respect the players' views. It's just unbelievable. It is a terrible blight, once again, in society in the north of Ireland, especially when you think of the efforts made by the Irish Football Association to stamp this thing out." Well, I think it's worth always talking about and worth remembering, because even in this day and age where we hear on social media of people from different identities, different intersectionalities in society, depending on your religion, your gender, your ethnicity, the colour of your skin, your political beliefs even. Everybody's kind of protected, it feels like. But this is the one kind of identity, it feels, that's uniquely up for derision. You know, it's not something that's called out. I don't feel it's protected enough by the law. And even though that happened 22 years ago, we've not really moved on, whereas you've got other people who are protected. And I just feel that that's just typical of the UK, the west of Scotland, Ireland. And I think whenever we remember Celtic players and how difficult it must be to not only be an athlete, but to play for Celtic, it takes a really, really strong personality. But for Neil Lennon, the attitude that he demonstrated, that mentality to continue playing for Celtic after that took a really, really strong personality. And I don't think he gets recognised enough. I don't think he got enough support. Certainly got a lot of support from Celtic fans and his colleagues. But from the media, that's where the support was lacking. And I just think it's worthwhile remembering what he went through and what he still goes through to this. For me, an absolute legend. He shouldn't have became the permanent manager a second time round for Celtic. I think if he never went down that route, and if he just kind of walked off into the sunset after winning as another treble, then it would have been the perfect ending of his Celtic story. But regardless of that, he's still a Celtic legend for me, a brilliant player and an interesting character. Ross, where are you with Neil Lennon in terms of his story and the type of person that he is to kind of come through that ordeal?
I mean, just echo everything you say. I think you absolutely nailed it, Gavin, on all fronts there. Neil Lennon, for me, as a player for Celtic, and that Martin O'Neill team, you had obviously your Henrik Larssons, even Moravcik, you had all the players at the top end of the pitch, like John Hartson, Chris Sutton, you had Paul Lamberts, you had Stilian Petrovs, Bobo Baldies, great players in their own right, in their own positions. But Neil Lennon, Franny will tell you, Neil Lennon for me, he was the number one. He was my favourite player in that Martin O'Neill team. That team, when they functioned the way they did, without Neil Lennon breaking play up and playing. Listen, it wasn't spectacular. He didn't score a lot of goals, but he done a job in that team that I've said it numerous times, that like your Makalelis and your Jeremy's done at Chelsea, Real Madrid, teams like that. He done that job for that Celtic team in that era, and he done it brilliantly. And then, obviously, like you say, he's went through that, obviously, with the international team, and then all the stuff that he received in stadiums around Scotland, right down to when he became the Celtic manager and he was attacked pitch side by the Hearts fan. It was absolutely deplorable. One of the worst things I've seen on a football pitch in terms of somebody going about their business, trying to do their job, and he's basically kind of sucker punched for the back. It's it's the biggest, one of the most cowardly things you can do to somebody.
That guy didn't even get jailed.
No, I think he got away with it.
Just another part of injustice.
Listen, see now, I think that they would come down harder on him now, I think. But I do agree with you, Gavin, that what he went through 20 odd years ago still exists now. And Neil Lennon did not get the support for the media that he should have got. He did. I think they sort of thrived off it a wee bit because it gave them news, it gave them stories to latch onto. And no, but I mean, Neil Lennon for me he's a Celtic legend, a club legend. He's won numerous titles as a player. He got to a European final as a player, albeit we lost it. And then he went on to become manager, and he won, I think it was a couple of trebles he maybe won. I can't remember exactly. But then I would agree that with hindsight, he probably shouldn't have became Celtic manager for a second time. But at the same time, he comes in, he steadies the ship after Rodgers, and he took us over the line, albeit Rodgers had laid the foundations. But he came in, and his first game was at Easter Road against Hibs in the Cup, and he came in, and everybody was worried because we were going for another treble. You lose that game and the treble's out the window. And he comes in and he gets a 2-0 victory, he steadies the ship, and we get over the line and we get the treble. And I think, as much as it shouldn't have happened, it was very difficult not to offer Neil Lennon that job again after the way he had steadied the ship. Listen, doing it in the showers probably wasn't the right way to do it. Maybe take a few days and have a think about it and let the dust settle, and then see how the land lies. But it was done the wrong way. But I think it was very difficult not to offer Neil Lennon, a club legend, that job again for a second time off the back of steadying the ship with Brendan Rodgers. But Neil Lennon is, for me, I would have to say, probably my footballing hero growing up. I say growing up because I was about when he signed for Celtic. I think I would be about 17, 18, which is you're still growing up at that point. But footballing hero, Celtic hero, loved him.
I was at
Still
one of those. Mate, absolutely. He's been brilliant for Celtic. He's been brilliant for Celtic, and for the most part, anyway. I was at a Celtic kind of exhibition, and Martin O'Neill was a speaker, and he spoke about the events of that, and he said that after Neil had received the death threat. The first time that all the boys were back at Parkhead, they were in the dressing room, and Martin and Neil, in order to break the ice, he said, Neil, nice to see you. I see you got my phone call.
That's right.
I guess you need a bit of humour, a bit of gallows humour, to kind of get you through those times. And certainly the camaraderie of such a strong dressing room would have been brilliant to pick Neil Lennon up during those kind of dark and difficult times. Franny, I know everybody's got their own opinion on Neil Lennon anyway, but certainly a dark chapter in Celtic's history, a dark chapter in as what Stephen said earlier in the comments, how the anti-Irishness is never really called out the same way as other injustices is called out, as I alluded to earlier on. Especially you see it nowadays, the way that heavy sentences are being handed out by the government, whether you think it's right or wrong, but this just seems to be this one thing which always seems to go under the radar. But Neil Lennon, player, manager, captain, difficult to judge him against other Celtic captains, just considering what he went through that nobody else probably has or will in the future.
If you go back to that I think it was his 50th game. He was going to be captain for Northern Ireland as well, wasn't it? I'm sure that's what happened that day as well. So he never obviously got to captain his country. I don't know if I can't remember if he ever went on to captain his country, but it certainly obviously didn't happen that time. But to go through what he went through, then obviously came back as manager for the first time. Obviously, we're going through the death threats and things previously. Then obviously Ross alluded to it, he got attacked at Tynecastle. I think that was around about the time where he was getting bullets in the post as well. There was certainly that happened during his managerial career, and there was other sort of public figureheads, not necessarily Celtic, who worked for Celtic, but Celtic minded, if you like. They've maybe worked for Celtic in the past, like lawyers and stuff. I think there was a few folk got bullets in the post. So you had to go through all that, and as much as I think what Ross said, and obviously yourself said, hindsight, probably shouldn't have got the job second time round, but it's hard to, you just secure a treble, it's hard not to offer him the job. But the fact that, I know on one hand you could say Lennon maybe wouldn't get a better offer, but considering what he went through all those years ago as a player, then what he went through as a manager, not just as at Celtic, but obviously in his public life, his family would have went through a lot. The guy did not care a jot. He was more than happy to take that job on again. He didn't for once. Well, I don't know the guy, but from the outside looking in, it looked like he didn't care what would then the subsequent sort of what could come of that and how that would be perceived again over in Northern Ireland, where he's probably still got family and things like that. So you can only credit the guy for kind of putting Celtic first before him and his family a lot of the time. Like safety wise, he didn't really. It was Celtic first, and he always backed Celtic in the media. Sometimes maybe not in the best way, if you like. Not very diplomatic. Just maybe could have chosen his words better. But I think a lot of that was down to passion. Just he would always fight a corner. So you've got to credit him for that. And his European record is pretty good as well when you actually look at it. He obviously got out the Champions League. He topped the Europa League group as well. So he's got a pretty good record as Celtic manager. Now, obviously, it's hard to compare it against other folk because it's different times and stuff. But for me, I think it's. I don't like to tell folk. Folk have also got their own opinions, but I think if you cannot hold Lennon in a high regard, I didn't get it. It's like, I know the whole COVID season kind of tarnished it short term, I would say, sort of I wouldn't say tarnished his legacy, but it tarnished a bit of what he'd done for the short term, I would say, because but it was also a proud guy just trying to hang around it. He probably thought he could turn it around and wanted to be the guy to turn it around and things like that.
Yeah.
When all of us were obviously could see that it was not happening. But for me, not a bad word to say about the guy. I don't think you can have a bad word to say about him considering all he went through and all he gave for your club at the end of the day.
Very well said, both of you. Thank you for that. I know it was a bit of a difficult one for on this day feature, but it's certainly something worth remembering and supporting that type of Celtic figure. Going to move on from there. I just wanted to talk about the recruitment team itself. So there are rumours. They've been going for a while, but there are rumours that we will be making an announcement of a major overhaul of the recruitment structure with new personnel recruited. So I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Now, obviously, there's a lot of negativity regarding our lack of recruitment so far. So if this is to be believed, this rumour that we're going to have a major overhaul sooner rather than later, then I wanted to get your reactions on this. So, Ross, is this a reason, do you think, for the inaction, the lack of assertiveness thus far? And do you think we would be further ahead if this was in place prior to the summer starting? And finally, is it the logistics of implementing that? Is that harder than what we as fans imagine it to be? Or should it be quite a straightforward process of getting the right people in as a recruitment thing? If it was so easy, it would have been done already. However, we were given a lot of time with Mark Lawwell leaving us. So I guess, just to rehash my long-winded question as always, is that the reason for the lack of activity in bringing in people? And if we did have it at the beginning of the summer, would we be further ahead right now?
I think you would have to say aye, it is, because I think it was the last time I was on the podcast, maybe on with yourself, Gavin, and we kind of spoke about it, and I said that they're obviously, the recruitment team's in a bit of transition now, and that's maybe why we're sort of maybe leaning on Brendan Rodgers' contacts, stuff like that. That's maybe why that was. But I think you look at it and you go, Mark Lawwell's been out the door for a wee while, so it has you would have liked to have thought that they would have got the recruitment team in place for this window coming up. But then, on the other hand, you could say, well, maybe they've done their due diligence. It's took a bit longer. They know that they got it like severely wrong last time round by appointing Mark Lawwell, and they don't want to. The Celtic board are quite frugal, for want of a better word, if you like, so they don't want to squander money willy-nilly like they did last summer on all the players that, for all the world, the majority of them have failed. A lot of them have went out on loan. Some might go out on loan. Others haven't stamped their authority and held down a first-team place, and were largely playing with the same, like their strongest 11 being pretty much an Ange team, albeit they're playing in a sort of Rodgers fashion, which is not massively different, but there is still differences. But I'm sort of on the fence. I would like to have seen them getting the team in place for this window. It hasn't transpired like that, but if the rumours are to be believed, and that is going to be getting announced soon, then it can only be a good thing going forward. But it doesn't make this window any easier with the fact that we've not got players in. Well, we've got some players in, but other players out with what we already had. I still hold out hope and still believe that we will get some business done. Whether it's because we haven't got that recruitment team that it's taking a wee bit longer, I don't know. But you look at teams like Man City, right? And I know they've got a far better squad than us. But you would expect them to go again and go into the transfer market and add, and they haven't done thus far. But obviously they're now, with 2 weeks to go, making moves for Gundogan, who was a player that was with them previously. He's been away for a year, and they're looking about bringing him in for another year. Now, I know it's a higher calibre player, but if Celtic done that, the fans would be up in arms. But it's okay for Man City. And then, what my point is, kind of, is that even Man City are still going into the market late and doing business, and it'll probably be good business. Celtic can still do good business in the next couple of weeks. Is basically my overall point there. I would have liked them to have got business done earlier. Rodgers, he's alluded to it, would have liked it as well, but it hasn't happened. It is what it is. But if we can still get some business done, and good business, and business that Rodgers wants done in the next couple of weeks, even late on in the window, I'm okay with that, as long as we get the players in and they're off the level that can go into the starting 11 or give us more depth where we need more depth. Then I'm quite happy with that. And I've said numerous times now that at the start of the window, I would have said we needed 5 to 7 players. Not for 1 second did I think we were going to get 5 to 7 players in of the quality that Rodgers wants. But if we get 2, 3, even at this late stage, I still think it's okay. And by the way, we've signed Ida, and everybody keeps saying we had him last year. It doesn't matter. We needed a second striker. We went into last season with he wasn't going to be the answer. We've got rid of him. We've brought in the guy that Brendan Rodgers wants. We had him on loan. We've now got him on a permanent basis. He's our player. So I think that makes us, albeit we had him in the last 6 months of last season, it makes us stronger because we've got a guy there who knows where he's going to be. He's fully settled. He wants to be here. And he's shown that he can do the job in a Celtic jersey. We now want to sort of supplement that signing, if you like, with other guys who clearly weren't here last season but are coming in and on paper and in Rodgers' mind, and whoever's sort of scouted them can come in and be that level of player and have that level of impact on the team, like an Adam Minida has, like a Kuhn is starting to show. That's the hope, and I believe that it can still happen. Maybe some people will say it's pie in the sky, and maybe I'm just too positive. I'm hopeful, and I believe that it can happen. But if it doesn't, and the window closes, and we're sitting at the stage we are now, having lost Matt O'Reilly as well, I'll be as angry as the next guy. Absolutely.
Okay. The one thing I would disagree with you about is that sentiment, and I largely agree with you about a lot of what you just said there. But do you see the one kind of phrase where you're stronger by having Ida as a permanent player? I get it from like a security point of view that he's a permanent player. But if you have player A who's with you for 1 season on loan, but then for the following season he then becomes a permanent player, he's no longer on loan, I don't think that makes you stronger from a playing perspective wise. I think from a planning perspective wise and an asset perspective, then I agree with you being stronger, but I think it's more kind of staying the same almost. Obviously, the player's going to get better. He might well have a better season, because he'll be more integrated. But I think it's kind of, without being negative, I think it's kind of not strengthening as such. However, I do get where you're coming from. Franny, over to yourself. In terms of this possible overhaul of the recruitment, and it's long overdue, I would say that it's easier to make decisions on the sale of players without having that structure there in place. I think it's easier to make decisions on the sale of players, which the manager has already earmarked as surplus to requirements. So like we already spoke about the departures earlier on in the podcast and the people who have left. I think it's easier to be more assertive than that. But I think it's harder to make decisions on incoming players because that's decisions that are going to cost you millions of pounds. And I think that given our scattergun approach in the last couple of transfer windows, we've really hampered our progress in terms of bringing in people who are just taking up a wage and not actually going to be contributing to the first team. And so I think that with this lack of structure in place, it's easier to trim the squad, which is kind of what we need as well. But at the same time, it hampers us from making these key decisions. We've been relying on Ange for the past couple of seasons to bring in the players that he knows. And now we've been relying so far on Brendan Rodgers and his expertise, but we haven't really been able to rely on our own scouting department. That might be me being harsh. I'm not really talking from a place of knowledge of, proper insight as to what they earmark as potentials. They probably earmarked Sinisalo, and Brendan Rodgers says, you give me Sinisalo, I'll give you Kasper Schmeichel. That's how I see it right now. So do you think that one of the reasons for the lack of an activity this summer is because we don't have that? Do you think that we could be further on? For a left back, there is no reason that we don't have a left back competing with Greg Taylor right now. I heard people blaming on the Euros, and then it was the Olympics, and then no doubt it'll be the Eurovision Song Contest next. Like, you can't keep blaming it on things. Like, there's no reason why we haven't brought in a centre back right now to challenge Scales. There's no reason why we haven't brought in a left back right now. What do you think is holding us back in that regard?
I think a recruitment team probably is, or the lack of it could be holding it back, because it shouldn't be on the manager to go. Obviously, the manager needs to be involved in players. I know sort of the modern way seems to be that the managers are giving players, they're more of a coach now. It seems long gone are the days where a manager has total autonomy and runs day-to-day things in a football club, like maybe your Alex Ferguson's, your Wenger's done in the past. It seems to be you have got like your director of footballs, these type of guys that will come in and they'll have a type of player that the manager wants, and then it's all about going and trying to find him. And then obviously maybe once you've got it down the line a bit, you'll maybe say to it's maybe down to the manager then to go, like, we've got A, B and C, who do you fancy? We can get them all, but who do you fancy? Because you'll be coaching them at the end of the day. It's maybe not necessarily Brendan Rodgers went out and identified these guys. So I think that could be an issue why it's taken a wee bit longer, because we don't have that recruitment team. We are relying on Rodgers to do a lot of the groundwork, if you like, along with, I think it's one of the head scout. Then once they've identified the players, I think the backs have said it's down to Michael Nicholson and I can't remember the other guy's name to then get the deal over the line. So that must be a slow process, because it's just, certainly from the outside looking at it, doesn't seem the modern way how a football team works. Seems to be more, like I say, there's guys in there that will have an idea of what they're meant to bring in. But I do agree with what Ross was saying. I think it was I don't know if it was Brian Warrett. I think it was Brian Warrett said that to get these level of players in, it's got the level we want. It probably has got to take a wee bit longer to get these guys in. I'm not saying that's making excuses for not having left backs in or certain positions in. You can still get deals done early enough, but I think maybe I'm giving folk a pass in this. But Rodgers did say recently that, he did say he could have 9 players in by now. So I think Rodgers is maybe part. I say Rodgers in the sense that I think he's vetoing a lot of players. I think he's been offered a few guys and went, no, I went through all this last season, and look at all but Kuhn and Adam Ida. So two out the 9 all made a positive impact. There is an argument for Palmer making it. So even then, a sort of a 30% hit rate on the transfers really last season have worked. So for me, maybe Rodgers is slowing the process down in the sense that he's been presented players and saying, no, I don't want him. And Rodgers said that he's selling. You can go and buy your £2.5, £3 million guys, and you can sell them on for big money, like your Martinellis and stuff. But you can do the same, be going for your guys like Engels, Bogus. Now, not about pretending to know anything about these two guys, but they're obviously of a higher calibre if they're costing a bit more money, and you can still turn healthy profits on them. I suppose it's less risky, you would like to believe. I know money doesn't dictate the player's got to be good. I know it's gone back a wee bit and the market has changed a wee bit, but your Wanyamas of the world, your Van Dijks of the world, they didn't cost the earth, but we sold them for big money. I just think this day and age, you tend to have to pay that wee bit extra just to guarantee you're getting a player. So I think the lack of recruitment team, and I think Rodgers potentially vetoing a lot of players that he's been offered, is slowing everything down, because I think he's wanting that higher calibre of player. And I think my hope is, I mean, if we get Engels and Bogus, that is, I mean, I know I said I know nothing about the guys, but if we're talking about the level of investment around about the 8 million mark, 6 to 8 million mark for the both of them, that is, for me, that's serious investment in midfield for me. So that's the type of investment I want to see us do more regular. I'm not saying it needs to be 7, 8 boys at that level. 2 or 3 a season would be, I think, is what you try and do at that sort of level of investment. So that is my hope, that Rodgers is just holding out for these guys, and it's just taking a wee bit longer to get these deals over the line, if you like.
Exactly. And by the way, it's just struck me that if we actually bring in this, is it Austrian? Andre Engel?
Belgium, I think, mate.
Belgium. You're right. I can just see the fans singing, "I'm loving Engels" instead. I can just see it happening.
Yep.
We must sign him now. We must sign him now.
I'm all over that.
Just for that. And by the way, just to kind of sum up, I would much rather go through this, endure this, rather than bringing in numbers, simply for the sake of it.
Yep.
I fully sign off with the stance that we're taking if it is the case that we're waiting for the right people, not just people, but we're waiting for the right people. I think we can all get on board on that, even if it's we're going to be a wee bit negative.
I know a lot of fans are obviously angry. I mean, I'm not panicking. I'm maybe a wee bit frustrated with the lack of activity. I mean, I'll probably be like Ross next week if we're at the status quo and lost O'Reilly. I think it'll be a highly unacceptable transfer window if we don't bring anybody else in. But you look at Liverpool; they've brought in a new manager. They've not signed a player yet, and that's the perfect case the perfect case to go and back a guy. But nobody seems to really be panicking down there that they've not brought in a new guy yet to try and help a guy who's like Jurgen Klopp was a fantastic manager for them, and to try and help that guy out, Liverpool have not signed anybody yet, and there's even talk of their first signing being a keeper that they're going to send back on loan. So it just shows. And then obviously Man City, to go back to them, they sold obviously Alvarez for about 85 million, and I think the first signing they made after it was an 18-year-old that cost 1.2 million. As if we done something like that, be nuts.
We shall see. Right, we're going to move on to one of the final topics of tonight. So I appreciate it's a Wednesday. It's not a Friday where we do our 3-hour marathons, but still get a little bit. And then you guys are allowed to go off to whatever, a late supper or your bed or whatever it is you guys do. Champions League draw is going to be held next Thursday, the 29th of August. Still a bit away, okay? There's still some teams who have to be finalised for the draw before they can actually we can find out who we've got as opponents. But I wanted to ask, I know that we can be cynical about the Champions League with the growing gap, the growing gulf between us and the top teams in Europe. But I wanted to ask, is there even just a wee part of you that's excited about being part of this new format of the Champions League? Like if you remember back in the 90s, it was Rangers who were the first Scottish representatives of the new look Champions League group stage. And it took a long time. It took until Mark Neal brought us in. And we had a really exciting campaign. It took a long time before we actually debuted in that format of the Champions League. So I wanted to see if any of you are actually excited about this or if you're just being cynical. And what would your ideal format of the European Cup be? Would you like to go back to how it was with the old school two-legged knockout affairs? It would certainly mean possibly no money if you go out of the first stage, and then you'd maybe drop down if there would be a drop-down option. But if you had your way, what would it be? So Ross, first and foremost, is a part of you which has got an optimistic approach to this new format?
I wouldn't. I'm more optimistic. I wouldn't say I'm excited. More intrigued. Because I mean, you can get told how it's going to work, and like you're going to play 8 games, but until it actually pans out, my wee brain certainly can't quite see how it's going to work. But listen, you're getting extra games in it, and the fact that, like you've said there, I never really thought about it, but we're like going to be playing in the first 1-8, and we never got to do that last time around when the format changed. I don't know whether it's going to work better for us in terms of getting more games, but even at this stage, I've said it already that we're a better team now than we were this time last year. So that fills me with a bit more excitement, having seen the way we performed in it the past 2 seasons. And I know Stephen absolutely hates it, but I think that we did compete in the games for the most part, out with the one in Madrid against Atletico. I think we'd done well. We just lacked that cutting edge, that bit of killer instinct, if you like, that the majority of the other teams have. And but for that, and maybe wee elements of luck, but you have to defend better as well, of course, and it's very difficult to do that because any slight mistake is absolutely punished to the full. I go into it believing that we can compete in that same fashion again, and we're playing better, so it fills me with a bit more hope. I'm more looking forward to the Champions League because you get to play against the top teams. Again, I don't know, obviously, who that'll be or how the draw is going to work. I'm intrigued to see how that'll pan out next week. Really looking forward to watching it. I hope it's on at night because I probably won't get to see it if it's like how it used to be. It used to be like 11, 12 o'clock. What was that comment there?
He was being a negative Norman, as Steve Clark would say. So if you're excited for the Champions League with this team, whatever gear you're on.
Well, I never actually said I was excited. I said I was intrigued. So
I'm mildly excited about it.
Aye. But listen, it's Celtic going into the Champions League. It's my team. I'll always support them. And even if we come out of this window with no matter really, and we've not signed anybody else, I will be angry. But see, the next time they play, I'll back them to the hilt, and I'll watch them, and they'll probably play really well like they have been throughout the season so far, and I'll be pleased with that. And we all know that our bread and butter is the league, but we are a better team now than we were this time last year. I'll still maintain that. People can think I'm talking shite if they want. That's just how I see it, and I'm intrigued and slightly looking for. Well, I'm more looking forward to watching us playing and pitting our wits against the top teams, whatever form that may be after this window closes.
Mm-hmm. And Franny, as Ross said, he wouldn't be disappointed, or he wouldn't be raging. He would just be disappointed. I totally fucked that up. You said something, and
I said something.
I can't even mind what I said.
anyway. Franny, the old glamour tie thing. Would you want a glamour team? We're probably going to get somebody anyway. So we go in as 0.3. The kind of you've got four seeds, and we are in pot 3. So we will be playing against some teams who, on paper, are shiter than us in terms of Europe. So we're going to get the good, the bad, and the ugly. So do you want a battle of Britain? Do you want to play against an English team? Do you want the crop of Europe? And again, how would you want European competition to be? Would you want it to go back to how it was, the knockout, or do you prefer, from a selfish point of view, the money that we get and therefore a drawn-out league phase? How would you like it?
Supposing that the ideal scenario Gavin, would be going back to the old traditional way of straight knockout. That then, as the champions, it's technically true to its name. It's the Champions League. Then it's the champions of each league playing it. But there's too much money involved in it now. Hence why it's now been extended. It's now in this new format. For me, it's a bit of a rip-off of this European Super League. I think that's the only reason it's been extended, because there's the threat of the European Super League has never really went away. So I think they've bowed a bit to these teams that Kenny started at and put in some more games. And inevitably these teams that wanted the European Super League will get more money at it, so they'll move further away in the pecking order, if you like. So I would like it to go back to the old traditional route of straight knockout, no seeding. It would be a wee bit of a leveler, because teams wouldn't always go as far and wouldn't gain as much money. But as we know, that's never ever going to happen. It's only ever got to go one way. What's that?
Red is obviously behind.
So
he's still the best of the fullbacks.
I'm glad he agrees.
I can't believe that Ross dropped Greg Taylor like a bad habit. That was totally unexpected.
Greg Taylor gets unfair criticism, but he isn't like as good as some of the guys that were in that list.
He's not the Messiah. He's not the Messiah. Is that what you're saying?
No, absolutely not.
No.
Franny, apologies.
But no, you're totally fine. You're totally fine. But no, I'm certainly looking forward to it. Hopefully, obviously, there is improvements in that team to help us compete a bit better, because I think you need to make the top 24 to then go into a sort of a playoff phase. So I would be hoping with 8 games that I don't know how many points you would need to kind of accumulate. Obviously, it's depending on the rest, if you like, but you would hope maybe 3 wins, maybe, or get around about 9 points would get you up there, 9 to 10 points.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the way it works is obviously it's 2 for pot A, 2 for each pot. Is who you'll play. Because obviously it's 7 or 8 different games, or 7 different games. You don't play home and away, if you like. It's just 4 home games, 4 away games.
Yeah.
And 2 from each pot, and obviously 2 teams from the same country can't play like current or how it was last season. So I suppose I would want a favourable draw, but is there really such a thing at the in this competition? It's all apparently your best teams up for around Europe, so it's hard to say a favourable draw, but that would be the ideal situation to try and pick up points, so you're not there just and getting turned over. But this is the sort of the elite of Europe. It's got to be, teams will turn over teams quite easily, but we'll see, Gavin. I'm optimistic, because I like a rumour. I like a transfer rumour, and it's heated up over the last sort of 24 hours, 48 hours, who might be coming in, who might be leaving and stuff. So I'm fond for all these rumours, shall we say, and getting hooked and thinking we're going to win the Champions League. So that's where I'm at. I'm excited for it, because it's like Ross said, it's good to go. It's good to be in this competition. I suppose maybe what might play in Rodgers' favour, because there's no drop down into Europa League, and then obviously we'll play the playoff campaign sort of in next season to try and get in this, because I think we'll win the league fairly confidently. We'll win the league this season. So obviously we'll need to navigate the playoff round. So if the board want to be at the top of the table in terms of Europe and compete, well, I know some of them will. I think even Bankier famously said that we can't compete at this level, so it seemed they were just happy to be there. So if they're just happy to be there, they are going to have to do some serious investment. So maybe this will play into the fans and Rodgers' sort of a favour. They'll need to do some decent level of investment to try and be constantly in this tournament.
It's very true. I'm conscious that Ross is stifling yawns right now, so
I'm not enjoying it. I'm just
we're boring him, Gav. We're boring him. That's all.
Can I just add? Okay, someone was saying that they can't even contemplate the Champions League right now. However, the first round of fixtures is less than a month away. They kick off between the 17th and the 19th of September. And an interesting point as well, we have got guaranteed European involvement after Christmas because the Champions League...
By default, aye.
Exactly. It concludes on the 29th of January. So we've got that to look forward to. We can brag about that.
That's something else we can sort of chalk off and say we've had European football after Christmas, can't we?
Exactly.
The first time we're away.
Yeah. So what will be, but we're looking forward to, at least I am looking forward to Thursday, the 29th of August, to find out who we've got, what opponents we've got in the new look format of the Champions League. Finally, we've got St Mirren this weekend, Sunday, the 25th of August at noon. And this will, funnily enough, be our 4th out of 5 consecutive Sunday kickoffs since the domestic campaign started off. So we've obviously got St Mirren this Sunday, and then the following Sunday is a small matter of Celtic and Sevco at Parkhead. So looking forward to that. But of course, St Mirren, we're playing away. It's not an easy ground. However, we've already beaten Hibs away so far this season. So we need to take care of business in Paisley. Stephen Robinson's still the manager, and he normally gets him set up in the way that he wants him to play. Expectations, nothing less than 3 points, gentlemen.
Absolutely,
just to keep the momentum going.
Absolutely, I think.
Is this the type of game that Ida needs to be playing in? I thought he looked a wee bit rusty. Like, he looked fit, but just not match fit, not match sharp. I thought a couple of his touches were a bit poor, but I would still want. I think this is the type of game that we've signed them for, to guarantee us points in these away games, where sometimes it's difficult to beat the first block. Sometimes you need to go beyond that. I think that's the game that he's tailor-made for. Would you agree, Ross?
I would agree with that, Gavin. I think the game at Rugby Park tail end of last season was testament to that. But also he's came in at Fir Park and he changed the game last season at half time when I think we were maybe 1-0 down. I think at half time. And he changed the game then. He's that different option for the types of games where it's going to be difficult to break down teams. But even at home last season, the way we were playing, even at home, if we didn't get that early goal, we found it difficult to break down teams. But we're a more dynamic team now, and we look fitter. But certainly still, Adam Ida is a good option for to have in these difficult away grounds, and St Mirren is one of them. They've come on leaps and bounds under what's the guy's name again?
Stephen Robinson.
Robinson. Aye, he's done a great job anywhere he's been in Scotland. He's done a really good job at Motherwell as well. But they are a real, in sort of SPL terms, are a real force to be reckoned with. I think that's 2 seasons in a row they've finished in the top 6. Celtic have come unstuck there a couple of times. Under Ange they did in that famous game after I said that we'd go the season unbeaten. But that's another story. But I do think that the way we are playing, I think we will go there, and you always expect 3 points with Celtic domestically. But the way we're playing now, I do expect that again. I don't think it will be a 4-0 or anything like that, but hopefully, as Franny would say, an easy or a comfortable, hassle-free 2-0. But we'll see what happens. But I do expect us to win the game.
Franny, the other player that I would play, so Ida in ahead of Kyogo, and the other player that I would play is, because it's a tight pitch, I wouldn't play one of our star performers this season, and I'll tell you why. I would drop O for the game, put him on the bench, because it's a tighter pitch. I think James Forrest, with his craftiness, operating in tight spaces, I think he's the man for that. I don't think there'll be too much space for Kuhn to exploit. So I think James Forrest will be the man, because he's more mature with possession. And it's difficult to drop Kuhn. He's got 3 goals and 2 assists already. But I would start Forrest on the right and I put Maeda on the left with Ida up front. I think the rest of the midfield and defence takes care of itself. If O'Reilly is out, if he's gone, then who starts? You've got Callum McGregor, you've got Hatate, and probably Bernardo comes in. So that's what I would say. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What's your take on it?
I think he'd a possible all-start a lot to do with Kyogo's injury, but I would hope that Kyogo's fit to face Rangers because he just seems to know what his form on that game's really good. Well, suppose you could argue he'd have scored his 2-2 against them, so he'll be on a high. So, but I totally understand your Forrest argument, but I would maybe start him instead of Maeda, who again has had a really good start to the season, just with being similar thought process, Gavin. Tight pitch. There might not be a lot of space over the top that Maeda can maybe exploit. Whereas I think Kuhn has got that pass in his locker where he can take it in tight wee spaces and maybe play that defence bit and pass. So I would maybe agree with you why I'm starting Forrest, but personnel-wise, I would maybe put him in instead of Maeda. And maybe if the game sort of on a knife edge, so to speak, where you're maybe needing a goal, maybe to either get ahead or kill it, where they're maybe a wee bit more tired than maybe the sort of 60, 65 minutes, then maybe bring a Maeda on to then expose the defence. There might be more gaps open up then for Maeda to exploit. But for the reasons you gave for starting Forrest, I would argue that, but would be instead of Maeda for me.
And thanks, Paul, if I made a verbal slip up. I meant dropping Kuhn, as difficult as that is. Forrest on the right, Maeda, who's just scored 2 goals in the last game, Maeda on the left with up front. But I could be totally wrong, and I guess it's just all about opinions.
Yes.
Do you have your own version of the lineup?
Again, the back 4 picks itself, but in certain terms of midfield, if Matt O'Reilly is gone by then, Bernardo would come into the team. I'm quite comfortable with that, certainly domestically. And then I fully agree with the reasons that you would bring James Forrest in. I do. I think they're really valid reasons. But for me, I would stick with Kuhn because I think he's built up a really good understanding now with Alistair Johnston on that right-hand side. I think they link up really well. And he's got pace to burn. And for me, when Maeda's fit, he has to start on the left-hand side. As much as I love James Forrest, James Forrest can come in for me off the bench if the game's tight, and he's a guy you can rely on to get you a goal. Come in, fresh legs against a tired defence that Celtic. Oh, nearly wrote that pad there. It's getting late. It's definitely getting late. But I think he's a guy who can come in off the bench and really be effective if the game's a bit more tight. But for me, I think if Maeda is fit, he's the guy that has to start on the left-hand side for me. And then, again, the forward position, I don't know what the fitness of Kyogo is at the minute. I don't know what the fitness of Adam Ida is, but Adam Ida's not injured. He's just needing match sharpness. So, for me, you would like to think, for the reasons you stated, that he would start the game. And then if it wasn't working, you can bring James Forrest onto the left. You can put Maeda into the middle. You've got options there. So I would, for the most part, stick with the same team as he has went with throughout the campaign so far.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we will be back anyway for Friday for another episode before we take on St Mirren at the weekend. I am really glad that we're approaching the 2-hour mark, because if we were still a minute or two away, I would have just talked nonsense until we got to that. I think I'm getting like podcast OCD where I need to hit that milestone, and we're just 5 seconds away now from hitting 2 hours, which is brilliant going. So, guys, I've really enjoyed having you guys on. And who's on this Friday? Stephen will probably be on. James will probably be on. Yeah. Well, to the viewers anyway, thank you so much for your involvement tonight. A lot of good discussion. So I hope you are back for Friday to join us again. So thank you for that. And over and out. We're now over 2 hours. So my job is done. Guys, any final thoughts? Probably, Ross, probably got another yawn coming. Are you good? Off to bed soon?
That's me now. They're contagious. Once you think about it, it just comes.
Right. Anyway, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Over and out, and we'll just kind of end stream here and try not to do it too awkwardly. Do a wee wave. A wee wave, yes. Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.